All right, well, hello and welcome to Paint the Edges with your hosts, James Mack and James Thayer. I'm confident in this one. Confident. Dead-based confident that we are on YouTube for this one. because obviously I think was it last night? Was it yesterday? Last night. Anyways, got
Yes,
that yesterday, last night, whatever it is for us. Shout out Marshall for putting up with the Neanderthal that is me and my brain and trying to be verified on. Do you know how painful of a process that was? And what I also don't understand is like you had to get to what they called like, was it elite level or it was whatever, it was their tier 3 verification process. I probably shouldn't be slandering them when we're going to be on their platform, but anyways, whatever, their tier 3 verification process. And you got to get there to be able to post like a what to upload a video more than 15 minutes and have what subtitles or what was the thing, links or fucking description or something like that.
yeah. Basically, to be a full-fledged page without restrictions and constraints.
Yeah, that was weird. You know what I did laugh at though? Hilarious. I actually took a photo of it last night at like 1 a.m. in the morning or 2 a.m. in the morning when I had a look at it. I'm going to post it now. I looked at the one that Marshall has queued up. So we definitely, this is why I'm confident, because I know we have a podcast queued up to go off on Sunday, which I actually think is the one that we said this could be the first one. Like we might actually not be lying. We could be on point, which is amazing, a miracle. Go buy a lotto ticket if you believe in those things, because hell is going to freeze thy over. Is that what's pretty much going to occur within this? But what I did laugh at hilariously, like scroll down to like the like suitability thing. It's like not suitable for kids. And I was like,
putting it out there.
Yep. I was like, immediately, this is not a, and it's not because of it's not because of any like weird fucking shit going on. Profanity.
Yep. Profanity. Within the first couple of minutes, if you've been listening long enough, or for some reason, if you found us and you're new, that it comes up from time to time.
It's not time
and it's
to time.
not
It's quite
suitable
often.
for children, but for you,
often.
it is suitable.
Yeah, it will be suitable for you, and you'll gain a lot from it. From hopefully from an education standpoint within the fitness industry, maybe some life things. I don't. I pretty much almost just stabbed my inner thigh with the stabby thing. That was fun. Yeah, I don't know. I hope you'll get something. At the end of the day, I hope you get something out of this that's not just that's not just a waste of time. Oh, fuck. Anyways, not suitable for children or like under the age of, I don't know. I feel like 16-year-olds
anybody that
worse
has
language
sensitive
than I do.
ears.
Yeah, like, and it's not because I use a profanity in emotion. Does that make sense? Like, it's not like I'm not swearing at you. Like, it's never like a.
If anything, he wants to swear with you.
With you, yeah. Join me. Join my cult. Profanity. No, it's not even the profanity. I think there is a time and a place for it. There is, there's certain people that I follow on. Well, I don't follow that I've muted on social media. Who it's almost like the profanity aspect of it is what like gets their hook, or is the hook, and it's like that gets me. So I hope I don't come across in that shape or form ever, because then I really need to do better. And I'm trying. I really am trying. But as I said, it's the emotive side in me that comes out quite well in terms of these things. So that's where it stems from. It can be seen as negative. I got a lot of, remember in South Africa, I got into a lot of trouble when I landed up with an intimidation charge at the hospital because of the profanity in which, well, I also feel like it's the beard and the shaved head and the half a head full of tattoos. Like, I feel like that may have something more to do with like the intimidation aspect, not necessarily, or them feeling intimidated. There was no cool. Anyways, whatever. That's gone. It doesn't exist. But yes, it's profanity. Profanity. I do apologize in advance. Now, we have been attempting to do this topic. Is this 3 days in a row now? This is the third.
Yeah, it's 3 days in a row.
3 days in a row.
We've been killing it on that side, not killing it on actually getting to the topic that we've intended to get to.
Yeah, so I had a thought on the episode that is going out as our first one when we were kind of discussing. I actually don't remember what we were discussing. I'll be 100% honest, but I know what I said was true, and that's all that matters at the end of the day. It's like if someone asked me about something that I said a year ago, a day ago, as I asked you earlier, to 5 years ago, it's like it's probably something I would have said. It's you don't have to remember what you said if it's the truth type scenario. But kind of like a thought entered my brain with regards to like a model scenario or a business model to a certain degree, I guess. Now, I'm well aware that with regards to what I'm going to say, very likely won't happen, or I think the individuals that if they were to implement it, hey, never know, maybe this might be us, but if they were to implement it, I think what they need to realize is that there is going to be a slight larger cost in the upfront and the ability to kind of do this type of model to a certain degree. But the quality of the outcome that you get is, I think, the answer. And well aware, at the end of the day, businesses need to make money. I get this. I understand that. But I'm also going to say that this conversation or this thought process of mine with regards to this model doesn't take that bottom line into account as probably well as it should. Like, it's kind of in my head, like, yeah, if you break even, it's cool type scenario, which fair. Fair. It at the end of the day, this is not business advice in any shape or form, but sometimes it's not necessarily about the money. Yeah, money. We need money. Trust me, food is expensive, and fuel, fuck, oil is expensive right now with everything kind of going on. Anyways, I'm gonna throw out like kind of where I thought part of my brain was going. Myself Thayer, I kind of gave him an insight into it prior to this, so that he can at least come to the party from like, I guess the correct titles. But my thought process was what we typically see, or what I have typically seen, and maybe that's also part of this, is that maybe there isn't this being scenario. But what typically we see within the S&C scenario is we see that disconnect between and it really came up with that whole conversation. I'm trying to bring it back to light. But we see the disconnect with regards to like who's working on the floor, like the personal trainer side, or the non-injury staff. Maybe let's kind of put that bucket there. The general training staff. Fuck, that sounds really derogatory, but because there's some really smart individuals in regards to that. But the general training staff, and then what tends to happen is, fair. You have one individual working with a team, 10, 15 people, maybe more, and a lot of times more in terms of this, and they don't have the time, the place, the ability to manage everyone kind of going on and prevent any form of injury going. So, in my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong there and jump in whenever, but like in a true S&C sense, we're going to split up a squad into who is like fully ready in terms of physicals and what's kind of going on, non-injured in any shape or form. And then when I've done the concierge work with this, it's we have kind of like a medium tier and then like an injured, so like an orange and the rest. So you have green, orange, red. That's kind of like the categories that we run. Green, they kind of do the whole team program, team training. Orange, they may be doing something that is programmed from the rehab facility staff implements in terms of that. However, it's still kind of run, it's self-managed, but still kind of run within the team environment. They're not doing what the team is doing, but they're at the same time doing that. And then you have the Reds, who are working primarily with the injury medical staff, and they're kind of more hands-on in regards to that. Would you say that that's a fair comment and possibly how things are run? Or maybe that's even a good model in itself?
Yeah, I'd say it's a starting point for the discussion of the current strength and conditioning model and potential opportunities that it might create that we'll discuss through today. So essentially, looking at return to play protocols, almost that you have a tier system of who is completely cleared in training with the team. Within that, there might be some subcategories of like offense, defense, or position by position that might have specific programming to them. But in that green tier, they're good to go. They don't have any medical restrictions to be able to perform the exercise or be able to participate in the program. In that middle tier, that's where we're should be trying to utilize return to play protocols in advancing them back to that green group that they're not completely don't do anything or you're completely restricted to these guidelines. You have a little bit more accessibility to working out, but it might still be restricted protocols in what they're able to do. And then that red tier would be, either no protocol that red would be you're not cleared. So you're not working out, or you're working out specifically with the physical therapist because you haven't, like, those are your sessions. That in between, that yellow, that's, I think, we'll talk about all of them today, but that's going to be an area where typically what we might see, and by no means is this everybody, it really depends on where you're at, what your staff looks like, what the availability is, what the limitations are of the staff size, of the time that they're able to train. All these go into consideration. But oftentimes what that might be is like, okay, let's say you've got a shoulder injury. So like, hey, I'm the single strength and conditioning coach training a team of 30. Like, we can't do one-on-one. Go get on the bike for 20 minutes and do some bicep tricep things because you're cleared for that, but don't do anything with your shoulder. And that's kind of your workout for the next several weeks. I'll check in every now and again, like, hey, everything okay? Nothing hurting? Do we have any issues I need to be aware of? But it's almost as a byproduct of the constraints of the model or system. It's a secondary thought, is I'm just going to put you over here in the corner, ride the bike.
Yeah. And to be fair, and I think we do need to just kind of give like a blanket statement of, I understand that not every facility, coaching staff, I understand they are understaffed. I get that. But I think that's, we can't be naive to that factor. And like what we're talking about, I guess, is the perfect world, and probably more in like the private sector, to be 100% honest. Like that's kind of it. So in my head, the whole idea was, one, we likely need to have a greater amount of staff that can be like bring down the individuals, or the athlete per individual ratio down. I think that's number one. At the end of the day, that kind of solves a lot of issues. But, and this was kind of my point of where I wanted to really kind of go, is there needs to be a cross pollination between the injury staff, the clinicians, and that of the PTs, the personal trainers, in terms of this. And it's the exact model that Prescript runs with regards to what we're attempting to do and how we are trying to move the needle in the industry. It's exactly what Shallow and Junta do with regards to that. Rid Path, to a certain degree, as well, kind of falls into the scenario. Like, obviously, Junta and Shallow being more kind of on the clinician base, but at the end of the day, I feel like, and I don't understand why this thought process is not necessarily there, but I feel like they're shooting themselves in the foot by not creating either an integration between the two or teaching. Like, it's not like, so this is what I was referring to, is like, there may be a bit more of an expense that's occurred in the very beginning, but imagine if you, as the medical director, clinician, staff, even the physio of the team, and if there's multiple within the team, it's like, just run some, I don't want to say base or basic based kind of like education, but teach the personal trainers, the people that are spending more time with them on a hands-on setting, teach them the basics. Because at the end of the day, if you can get the touch point to the athlete before the injury staff gets the touch point, you're going to decrease the risk of injury, number one, thing that we should be focusing on as a strength and conditioning facility team element in terms of these things. And it should make your job a lot easier because, and fair enough, it's not necessarily, for lack of a better word, it's not necessarily the scope of practice. But imagine if you, as the physio, could go to, or if I was the clinician in that, and I could go to the youth there and be like, "Yo, David, give me a rundown on what you're seeing." But you can teach me, or you can give me that education, or give me the feedback from the things that I've taught you in regards to what are we looking for, what are the things we've changed already, what have we done already. It At the end of the day, all of this and what I'm kind of referring to, I guess, is efficiency within the program. Because if we can create, like, you kind of do the front work to create the efficiency in the long term of what that program is doing and how that program is running. And that's kind of like, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, if you know of anyone who does this, or if you think that this is a complete waste of time in any shape or form. And fair, it may be the fact that it is hard work. Like, don't get me wrong, it would take a lot of man hours to kind of set this level up. But I kind of see that as like, that's the investment in the long term of creating a better environment, getting better results, keeping athletes less injured, which means more athlete to money, or more money to athlete, which means more money to you as the facility. It's like, the more they play, the more game time they have, the better your reputation, the more, like, that's the referral system of this entire business.
Yeah. So what I would say is it's absolutely not a waste of time. I think the thing is, it takes organization and intention to develop this, to really understand the benefit of it, because it isn't universal. It's not necessarily synonymous with strength and conditioning. It would probably be more available, yes, in the private sector than in like a university setting. But what I will say is, we're starting to get examples, maybe not of the complete vision or the model that we discussed today, but starting to get some sampling of that around both spaces. And I'll give a couple examples, but also I think it's going to be beneficial in today's discussion too, to talk about trying to integrate personal training into with strength and conditioning, and kind of what these handoff systems would look like. Part of that is helping each area understand the thing that they don't really do that makes the other area more distinct. And we'll go through that here in a little bit, but there are a couple examples. One, we'll see like the performance director at some universities. That's becoming a bit more synonymous, where that person now is the connecting piece between the strength and conditioning coaches and the data-driven group, the group that is in the lab that's taking all the report. Yeah, the sports scientists. That performance director is the coordinator between them to, instead of just, hey, we have all this information in, and strength and conditioning is not using it, or they don't know how to interpret some of the information, or helping the sports scientists understand, like, you can't give S&C a 30-page report. They don't have time to read through it. We're like, I know you love all these numbers, but like, they're not going to read this, so it's not useful to them. But we'll see examples of that in a performance director, a performance coach, and in areas where they're starting to be a connecting piece in bringing some of these together, of the sports scientists, of strength and conditioning, of nutrition, to help be the communicating factor. And that's ultimately, in the model, is making more of a seamless transition for the athletes to flow through performance and aid, and have clearer lines through an organizational setting of communication. So we'll see that. What we'll also see a little bit, I know some instances where a clinician, whether a doctor of chiropractic, a physical therapist, doctor of physical therapy, is the head strength and conditioning coach. It's not as common as maybe you would think. But there are examples both in the collegiate and the professional setting that you'll see that where they have a greater understanding in kind of in those phases of return to play models of injury of performance on that side of it. But even that can create some limitations from the conversations I've heard and some of the experiences is that it's not universal, and so is something like that position, somebody with those credentials, understood or valued of what they add to a strength and conditioning program opposed to just a head strength and conditioning coach with a CSCS. Oftentimes we're still in that phase of like, well, I just need you to get my guys stronger. And, there's a communication breakdown maybe between the head coach and somebody with those credentials where it's not always long lasting or a beneficial relationship that will see that breakdown. And so, really thinking about a model that from the top down can help bridge the gap between these positions or provide examples and possible solutions where it's not a place that is going to just have all the money, all the staff, the highest credentials, everything like that, but really how it can be implemented. And this is something if you've been involved with Prescript as a coach going through some of the courses, you'll see some of the emergence of this through different degrees, through Yo Murphy performance in Tampa, that L3 is working to kind of integrate this where there is an in-house physical therapist. There is kind of this handoff thing going through specifically for the NFL combines, but looking at how could a model develop and expand, and what is some of the knowledge and information that coaches and trainers might need to know that is going to help them better be successful in this S&C model that we're going to discuss. So there are, pops of examples of it's a little bit of this, there's kind of this and there, but today we can dive a bit deeper into it through the conversation of what idealized that might look like.
So, and you know what, as you were kind of talking about that and running through it, something came to mind with, I think, what we see. And I like this is my simple answer is at this current moment in time, it's almost like we see we see this expected approach of the higher qualification. And I don't think that this is necessarily just a paper thing, but I do think it is a paper thing. We see this higher qualification demands or expects communication from lower level up, but not vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that I see this is, at the end of the day, this has got nothing to do with scope of practice. When I say nothing to do, it's got nothing to do with if I swing my dick around because I have a greater scope of practice than you. At the end of the day, this is a communication issue. Because if the bottom talks to the top and the top talks to the bottom, that's how you're going to get congruency of everything going on. It's like, why do we suddenly expect that like the physio can give me the guidelines on what I need to do with the said injured individual, but they won't take the feedback on from the other side, or we won't train them to be able to give me valuable information? It's kind of like asking the better question or teaching them how to ask the better questions to then give us a leg up in terms of the basically expediting the results of what we can do. So just if you thought about it from the lens of like a non-ego driven lens, or like a scarcity model of like, oh fuck, what happens if they take my job? It's like, and maybe that's part of it, maybe it's not, I don't know. But I literally look at this as it needs to be a congruency of junior coach to high level coach in terms of these things, and vice versa, because it's the thinking you know everything, and kind of not listening to the person who's coming into the industry and has no knowledge. It's like, hold on, you don't know, like, and that knowledge could be extremely valuable for what's kind of coming through.
And in this top down, bottom up model of communication, it's going to help one, allow that everybody is on the same page, having a clear vision to how the athlete can most be supported, but also a greater understanding and awareness of what the long term play is, what direction we're going with training protocols, what are going to be some of the intensities, the experiences that we're going to take the athletes through in a gym setting, but also on the sport performance side. What do we need to be mindful? This is where that conversation and discussion can happen. In a university setting, what we'll see is that credential of a CSCS being almost a like non-negotiable starting point. A lot of times there's a couple other organizations out there, but it's very much the prominent one that most people are going to be familiar with, and it's kind of a non-start discussion. Here's the thing: in the university setting, at least, you can't even set for that until you're either in your last semester of your bachelor's degree where it's clear you're going to graduate, and you don't get that certification even if you pass the test until you can actually prove that you've graduated with the bachelor's degree. So it's a starting point. But even in those examples, you're going to see internships, you're going to see students assisting, interning, helping with that don't have the credential. And so thinking about personal training certifications being a lower barrier to entry, how that staff or bringing on a staff like that can actually support what you're doing and shift the numbers on your side, opposed to most of the time where it's at, the numbers are against you. Most of the time, if you're lucky, you have a couple strength and conditioning staff that are there during your training periods. Very real world is you probably have a couple strength and conditioning staff that are there to support the whole university sports programs. And it's like, okay, head coach, if you're lucky, you take one sport. More than likely, it's you take a couple sports, you take a couple sports, you take a couple sports, divide and conquer amongst our staffs. And like, hey, if you're around, hopefully you can help me out. But I also realize you have several sports that you're overseeing their training. And so, one, in this model, it's putting more bodies in to help divide it up. What that can do, both private and in a university setting, is it realistically could train or could change how we see traditional programming in strength and conditioning, because a lot of it is segmented around there is one of me, there's 30 of them, I need them on the clock. We need to work at a pace, yes, to stay within the time frame that has been allotted in an academic setting. Same with the private setting, that you can't just have 2-3 hours of training protocols just run offhand. So there, it is time sensitive, but also it's because of management issues that somebody has to manage this number of athletes that they're outnumbered by. So we're creating programs that help us work within these constraints, within these confines of on the clock whenever we're lifting, have designated rest periods. We're running supersets so you can stay at your same stations, things like that. Part of that is coordinated because it's being observed to one or a few people, because the number game is against them. In this, bringing a number game, we're even bringing up a couple personal trainers in those settings could help divide, could help expand the opportunities that you have available to you. And where we started, when we're thinking about, because this is going to focus a lot more on the yellow and green of the
Yep.
athletes, it can help with that transition phase and preparation phase. Because think about, if I'm the head coach, let's say I don't change the model at all. I'm running we're on time, we're working through these rotations. That's fine and good. Nothing wrong with that. But we're working through this. But in the model, in those yellow players that are still working through the training protocols, the return to play, if they know the direction that the green tier is working towards, we can help build and advance the regressed exercises into the model that they're going to jump into. So it isn't this harsh transition of doing very, very limited, restricted things and then return to play, you're good to go right back into the workout because of no fault of their own. The main strength and conditioning coach doesn't have time to now bring this person up, or they're limited in how they're able to program them back. So this middle tier system is where people can get lost. And instead, it could be an opportunity of someone like a personal trainer to help bridge that gap between return to play protocols in regressed movements that are going to easily transition and progress into the current work that the whole team is doing in that green tier.
So I guess when we kind of look at it, and this is why I kind of said at the very beginning, it's like I'm well aware that this may not necessarily be like viable financially, and that is fair enough. And that is why I think I threw that caveat out there, because essentially what we're saying is you're going to need more manpower, in some extent. That would be kind of like a agreed upon kind of thought in this. Maybe not. I guess at the end of the day, if you train them up more effectively, you can have a more integral start. If you have, let's really kind of break this down. If you have the ability to rehab or do corrective exercise by exercising correctly, to quote a kind of a shallowism there, it means that the physical staff, the injury staff, become your helping hand within the training staff. So if you had 5 physical therapists, it's like, why aren't the 5 physical therapists, 2 of them at least, either head rolling? I kind of think of this as like you have kind of like your worker bees, and then you have kind of like the staff behind it, and then you have like it's a hierarchy system. And as much as I said, we don't want to kind of flex the hierarchy system, but essentially we have a hierarchy system. We have those working. We have someone floating around all the time. Imagine if let's kind of try and maybe create a numbers game. We had 5 athletes to one trainer. We have 20 athletes in total. That means we have 4 trainers, and then of that we have 2 physical therapists that float around between each 2. That means that there's an extra and more expert, and maybe it's not even a physical therapist. And this is kind of what I'm thinking or trying to bring this model in, is it doesn't necessarily have to be a physical therapist. It can be a personal trainer that gets educated by the physical therapist at a high level. There's a progression model that occurs. Someone with more experience, more eyes, more kind of being able to see, a leadership role, for lack of a better word. So you have this moving forward, and as your kind of your sense or your point there, it's like, imagine if your personal trainers were your interns, and then from there your personal trainer became I want to say head coach. Fuck, it's a bad word. Head coach that floats around and double checks this. Now, it's another skill they have to learn, but there's a progression model. You don't just have someone being a personal trainer for the rest of their life. There's a progression model. They move to head coach role. From that, maybe it becomes a little bit more off the back end. Like there's something of a development side, but at the end of the day, in my head, and again, this is all theoretical, to a certain degree, I actually think Yo Murph runs a very similar-ish model discussion with, when we kind of bring that in with Prescript. But essentially, we're going to create a better quality of results from the athletes we work with by running this model.
Yeah, to that, there's a potential for better quality, more engaged athletes, a better from an organizational chart point, more organized, better supported. If you're thinking about it from like in a current model where you're the head strength and conditioning coach, you being that floater, essentially you're delegating certain responsibilities to staff that frees you up instead of you being the person on the clock running through. You're still in the environment, you're still engaging, but now it allows you to be more flexible and dynamic in that space and time because you have this organizational chart that's allowing more support. Because that's how I think about it essentially, is it allows for better support, better results, and more quality engagement for athletes at a more personalized scale. And to this, yes, we'd be adding staff, but it's also a consideration of how that creates positive results and how you can build models in to better support that. If you're training a whole team in a private sector, if you're training a whole team, one, either that's going to be on an individual base that each person is paying to train during these time, or you're taking on a team as a whole. Either way, just looking at how that model could support you adding to the staff instead of it's on me, I have to do everything. Can you develop the model where it justifies developing this team? Because ultimately, just like we've talked about for personal trainers and online training several times on this podcast, for in that private sector, it's now I'm creating a more scalable model. Because what happens for the owner of that position, if they don't look at how can I scale this, they're going to limit it to hour by hour. I can only do so much because I only have so much time in the day. Whereas if we're creating scalability, it allows for that fluctuation. It allows for a greater intake than what we have available and more opportunity to grow. In that growth, that's where we can start seeing, I started training out of a closet to now I'm training out of this huge facility that we built to accommodate the special needs that are specific to who we're training. As you said, looking at the compound in Tampa, that's really what has developed over several years with Yo Murphy in being able to design and develop a space that not only has the aesthetics of anybody walking in there and like, oh, this, like, it has a cool aesthetic. It has all the equipment that you need, but now it has, hey, there's a relaxation recovery space in the back for the athletes. We have an in-house physical therapist. We have, a meeting room for the staff over here. We have more than just the bare essentials of a couple racks and a turf to try to get this stuff done, but really it's developing and expanding because of a similar model in place and trying to have this ability to scale and hand off.
I think, and what comes to mind, and, this may sound far fetched in everything that we're discussing, but let's be real. Part of this is already happening. It's just now literally taking one extra step. And where do I say part of this is happening? You generally, and you see this in like high school sport to a certain degree, where it's like the team captain or something along those lines will take the warm up. It's like that's the same thing. Or like in Yo Murph to a certain degree, I remember when a new group of athletes came in, one of the juniors was taking the warm up and getting the warm up going. It's like the principle of what what's happening there is the same thing of what we're talking about in the long run here. Is it's a delegation system, and unfortunately, the linchpin in this, and I get it, the linchpin in this is two things. One, education of people. I get that. I don't disagree in terms of that. Not everyone is going to learn at a high enough pace. Not everyone is going to develop their skills to a certain degree at the higher amounts from this. But I also feel like that's why that kind of like that graduation system of, junior coach, whatever, head coach, mentor, whatever you kind of like, that structure actually creates a little bit of this. Like they got to be able to do X, Y, and Z to be able to kind of move to the next notch on the ladder. This is that's the beneficial side of it. The other side of it, and I get it from a linchpin standpoint, is you got to trust people. And like I understand, like coming from me, that is the hardest fucking thing in the world, because you got to trust people. And off the back end, like I'd love to have the conversation with Murph at a stage of like, how did you how did you get to the point of not wanting to control everything? Because and ultimately that's the decision that comes into play. Is like you as the head of the organization. It's like it's the transition from being the head of strength and conditioning to, oh, I'm the performance manager, I'm looking after all of these avenues. It's the management role that kind of changes. Fair enough, not everyone's cut out for that, and maybe that's also part of it. Is like, hey, you don't want to move into that role, cool. But if you own the business, it's then your opportunity or your time to go, I need to hire someone to do that role. It's like that's where you need to start thinking about it and start kind of pushing it to the next level, because there's no scalability of the back end. And again, not everything needs to be scalable. I get that. But at the end of the day, you're going to get older. And then what? The legacy is going to die. This thing doesn't have legs to move forward. There's a time or place where you need to be able to step back in some shape or form and allow the next iterations, the rolling out of this to kind of happen.
Yeah, and I'll give some real examples of this happening in real time and also the opportunities this creates. One, yes, it takes somebody at the higher end of that top end to trust people in lower tiers to be able to complete a job or to provide the service and expectation that they've established under that brand, or in that system. It also takes another piece from that top end to really determine where is my time spent most valuable and where is it bottlenecked or limited. For Murphy, for an example, he's a great recruiter. He is very, very valuable of being out on the road, building these relationships and connections with the guys coming to do the NFL Combine. Also realizing that in a model like this and similar model for most private sectors is whenever you have a guy or a team build up and develop a pathway, now everybody looks to that of, oh, you had somebody in junior high that started with you and now they're in the MLB.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like, okay, there's the pathway. And so that skill set now becomes value of, I need to essentially be recruiting. I'm the person that is seen as, you train this guy, you can help this athlete get to that level because you've done it before. You're more of a value to get out there, to be talking to the athletes, to be talking to the parents, making the connections, going to these schools that are going to bring in not just one athlete, but whole teams. That can't happen if your every hour is accounted for because you're training people in the
yep.
facility. So there's that handoff of, where does the value, or what is your skill set that provides most value for this company to continue to prosper and continue to expand and develop. So there's that realization of, you might be good at 8 of the 10 things that are required in this. More than likely, you probably are, because that's why you were able to build a business
Yeah.
and make it successful. But it's kind of this ranking or realization of, what are the things I need to hand off because I'm not at, or because it's limiting the more valuable things that I can provide and somebody else is able to provide these. So there's that realization, that conversation, the discussion, the connection, all of that. But then also on the education side, I love that you brought that up of realizing the potential of that in, yes, it's a business, but also how you invest in that business of education to develop those relationships, or not relation, well, yes, relationships, but how
Relationships.
you
Yep.
how you develop that education. Because what I think too, very simply, is we're talking about strength and conditioning, performance, personal training right now. So I look at like personal training. very, very good at individualizing, being able to adapt to the individual person to make sure they're able to train. In strength and conditioning, very, very good at keeping the sport in mind of how we train. What are the additional influences and what is the performance that we're going to measure our outcomes off of? So those are two huge factors that the opposite groups don't get as much experience with or don't have to consider as much. So whenever I'm thinking about what this model could be, I think about from that higher end, it's bringing information and education to a personal trainer of here is some of the influences that we need to think about in a different way. It's instead of a traditional, like, you've spent 10 years programming push pull legs, upper body, lower body splits like this. Let's start developing high and low stimulus days because we have outside factors. That's for the most part, or here, I'll say it like this. That's not something that a personal training manual will get into is high stimulus days, low stimulus days.
Yeah.
But that is an education opportunity that can really shift the perspective for a trainer of how am I evaluating from a more global perspective. The great thing about that is it transfers over to even working with general population is how am I evaluating these time periods? How am I evaluating the stresses that they're enduring throughout the day, but also on a larger scale, and how this might influence how I program and how I perform with them. And it gets me out of the state where I'm as reactionary of, Joe walks in and it's like, okay, how you feeling today, Joe? Maybe we'll do this. Maybe we'll come in with a still an adaptive plan, but we're more informed because we start looking at information outside of just in that reactionary setting when they come and join us. Another example of S&C that we can look to is very data driven. They take a lot of information, they pull all of it. So on the personal training side, it's both of us have seen this, that there's trainers that are on the gym floor, no clipboard, no notes, and maybe they have the program memorized. Great, but here's the thing. You've probably been doing it for so long that you have that memorized, that you're not taking notes on it.
You also can't give any of the feedback off the back end of that. So like everything that you're referring to, and sorry to because it's great thoughts, and definitely think we could probably expand on this a lot more as we go on it. But the way that I kind of look at this is you do a pros and cons, a SWOT analysis of the positions, i.e. the personal trainer and the medical staff. What do they do? What strengths do both have, and what weaknesses do both have? And you know what? If you did that and just kind of running it through in my head and kind of as we're going this, you would find that the medical team's weakness is the personal trainer's strength and vice versa. And that's why kind of I initiated this entire thing with it comes down to a bottom down, top down approach. Both need to come through. It comes down to, we do this very well with regards to prescript with L3. What do we do every single morning on the camps? We go through the athlete analysis, or at the end of the day, and we have a whole team meeting and we discuss everything that went on. We do it prior to as well, where we go through the injury profile of the players that we know that are coming up. Why? We don't do this just because we want to fucking waste time. Like, we do this because it increases the ability, one, to teach what's going on to said individuals. It's like, hey, we literally have Jordan, we have the medical staff, and it's actually the perfect scenario of exactly what I've been kind of talking about. We have medical staff. We then also don't have medical qualification staff. We have yourself, myself, we have Jorge, we have Nick that comes in. And what do? They present on the aspect of what's going on with said individuals to teach them. Yes, we're talking about this in a controlled education standpoint, a curriculum. But why is that not happening it should happen within the scope of a business? Because at the end of the day, by doing this, you're going to get, I don't know, Nick is presenting on whatever, force velocity, whatever the fuck it is. And you're going to get one of the personal trainers and be like, oh, when I was working with Anton, like, he said this. And now suddenly everyone's going to get the feedback of X, Y, and Z athlete of, hey, he might be struggling, hey, he might be like not doing well. The best example of this comes to play, and to point out the weaknesses and the strengths, and sorry to digress slightly, but the weakness and the strength in the nicest way possible, other than shallow and junta, and not blowing smoke up it, but other than shallow and junta, a lot of clinicians, and I say this very respectfully, a lot of clinicians have terrible people skills. They can't relate to individuals very well. They don't have the flow, the natural in terms of this. A lot of the personal trainers have very good people skills. So what you tend to find is you find the clinician being like suit and tie, black and white, like very, very like that, and the personal trainer's not. Now, when you have someone who comes in injuries, who is injured, they need an uplift. They need the bedside manner, for lack of a better word. It's like, yo, teach each other, learn from each other in terms of these things. Yo, David's feeling a little bit down. His fucking dog died. It's like when he goes, if he gets down and he goes to the clinician or whatever it is, like the clinician can have something to talk about. There's relatability in terms. Now, fair enough. Yo's staff, great. When I was there and we had the physios and shit, they're fucking awesome. Good time, laughing all the time. Like that's the cool thing. Like you can, and we keep referencing Yo, but I think he's done, if not this model very well, and I obviously don't know the all behind the scenes other than the L3, but I would say that he's done a very similar type of model or naturally progressed into this model that I have in my brain. I just would love to see more people do it. It's you mentioned the personal training, and sorry, I'm keeping going, and maybe we'll cut it off in a little bit. But for example, like I do a lot of contract work for a lot of like personal training companies in regards to their individual coaches. So like I'll have a company that'll come to me and they'll be like, hey, we have 4 coaches, like we want to do like a mentorship with them. They want access to you. Like that's one of the services that I run. I don't run it as the group, but I run it as the individuals, because at the end of the day, they've gone and they've realized like, hey, if we upskill each one of these positions to another level, then it's great. And then off the back end, what I've done is on some of these calls, I get the person whose level they're trying to get them to join it and to teach them. Why would I do that? And it's like, it makes my life super easy, but at the same time, it's like, why would I do that? Because ultimately, then you have a congruency within the ecosystem. That's what you want. You don't, and fair. It's making myself redundant to a certain degree. I don't care. Cool. Like the goal is to make the industry better. If I then upskill an individual to get to the position to be able to teach the individual below them, I've won. Cool, I don't make money. I don't care. I've won in terms of it's exactly what we do in PSL1. We teach to make sure that the industry is getting better in terms of these things. And it's, I go back to summarizing, and I think of what I've been trying to say is it's if you take and you do a SWOT analysis or you do a SMART goals or however we want to call it of each position, you will very easily see that generally speaking, the weakness will be the strength and the strength will be the weakness or vice versa. And if you can capitalize on that and you can see that as a business owner, you will do very well at providing the quality of service that athletes require, and not even just athletes, general public require in terms of these things if you wanted to build that up.
It's definitely a business model that can be implemented, that there is examples to be able to pull from that you can make an you can create an organizational chart to allow for this development, allow for this communication, and use that SWOT analysis to set a plan in place of how you're going to naturally curate these experiences to develop and to advance the business as a unit.
Yeah, it's exactly that. Advance it as a unit at the end of the day. Great, we did the S&T thing, which, funny enough, kind of moves into a lot of other business models, I think, or could. Very, very likely in terms of a hierarchy structure of a PT business, anything like that. Maybe, it'll be very similar in terms of what we've just said, but maybe we run a similar thing with a a PT business element at some stage.
Yeah. So now, if you're watching this on YouTube or listening to it, if you are running a model like that, if you've developed something, let us know.
Pros,
If you
cons.
if you have questions about it, reach out. Love to have more of those conversations and expand upon these conversations. And as any, I guess now that we are here, we can say in the comments,
please subscribe
anywhere. Yes, like subscribe.
Please subscribe. Go to you if you're listening to us on Spotify. Go subscribe to us on YouTube, please, and thank you. On that note, we'll see you guys next week.